Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 12th of April, comes to you from London. And not much change really anywhere in the markets at the moment. It's been a pretty quiet week. We see the dollar is just continuing to edge lower. So the dollar index is still bearish below the cloud, but when we look across the week, it's been pretty flat. We see that in the chart here. So still bullish long term, but really trading sideways. The euro has actually risen against the weaker dollar this week, but again, not really changing the long and medium term picture. The dollar yen chart, actually, the dollar has risen quite strongly against the yen, so it does suggest that we will see a recovery. This is the risk-off trade coming, risk-on trade coming off. Yen normally being a safe haven, dollar gaining strength there, so it does suggest we'll see a turnaround in the dollar against other currencies. It tends to be a lead indicator. Sterling pretty flat with the Brexit woes. The extension of the Brexit period not really having a massive impact on the currency, and against the euro, we're still bearish in the short term chart. Against the Swiss franc, we're sitting at about 131. Not much change there either. Bitcoin has come back a little bit, fell yesterday from, we did hit day before yesterday nearly $5,500, and so we've seen a bit of a sell-off there. Not really showing up in the weekly candle because we've ended up kind of where we started, but we're back into bearish territory on the short-term chart. The S&P 500 index little changed overnight. Again, pretty flat this week, just reflecting little change in the markets. The same with the Nasdaq. The Dow was actually down very slightly, and we've seen a little bit of a deterioration over the last week, but again, not a great deal of change in terms of the chart. The Russell 2000 index has actually had a pretty good run. Yesterday it was performing better, and we are just edging higher here. But if you look at the broader market in the US over the last several weeks, we've been pretty flat. So there are some breadth concerns in many technical analysis quarters. The futures this morning little changed on the S&P. The Nasdaq E-mini also little changed, 0.1% up. So not easy to call which way the markets will open. The UK market virtually unchanged this morning as well, flat this week. The 250 also pretty flat this week, edging higher over the last day, but generally pretty flat. The DAX is down 0.25% this morning, so again just drifted a bit lower this week, and the CAC Quarante again flat this week, little change today. Japan down 0.12%, again reflecting not much change. The Hang Seng down 0.09%, and China down 0.04%. So we're just seeing flat across the board. India, where we're seeing elections, again, the market very flat, just slightly up there. And in Oz, we did see quite an improvement in Aussie stocks. They were up 0.85%, so they're probably the strongest performing market that we've seen over the last 24 hours. Brent crude sitting just at $71, so it's come back a little bit, but still holding on to this bullish trend. Three upside targets, 72.10, 72.30, 74.20. That's the sort of area that we're seeing. WTI also looking pretty strong as well. US nat gas sitting at $2.67, and if we look at gold, it's pulled back to 12.93, taking us back into short-term bearish territory. Just really in an area of uncertainty, gold around this 12.80 to 13.50 level. That's sort of the range that we're looking at. So still too early to call which way gold's going to break in the long term, but more upside targets than downside targets at the moment. Silver also falling back as you would expect, in line with gold, so we're looking more bearish there as well. US 10-year yields sitting at 2.5%, little change there. We did see a dip in the week, but we've recovered much of that back in space. Taking a look at the individual stocks on the Dow 30, we have the best performer yesterday was Boeing, but they've obviously had a terrible few weeks, and the stock's really fallen away since the beginning of March. So there's just a bit of a recovery rally there. Walmart up 1.2% as well. Home Depot also up 1%. So we're seeing a bit of movement there in retailers. Banks reporting today, so it'll be interesting to see how they fare. If we look at United Health Group, they were down 10%, so quite a big move there, and Walgreens also down. And so pharmaceuticals, we're seeing Merck down, Pfizer down, and Apple were down just under 1% as well. So it was a pretty weak showing there. Looking at the Nasdaq 100, we had also Alphabet. They were actually up 0.2%. Facebook down 0.2%. Not a lot of change there. And if we look at the best performer, Fastenal up 5%. That chart booming ahead, so that's looking pretty good. And if we look on Biomarin Pharmaceutical, they were down 3.7%. So we're seeing the effects there of pharmaceuticals at risk. The Aussie market, the best performer was Perpetual, up 6.2%. CYBG recovering still after their dire 2018. And if we look at the Sierra Resources were the worst performer, down 4.5%, so their downtrend continues. Taking a look at China, it was a pretty mixed picture as we saw. Best performer up there 4%, and the worst performer down 2.6%. India, as we mentioned, the elections there at the moment, the big story. We had Gale up 3.6%. The chart looking pretty strong. Lupin Limited also up 2.7%, but the chart not looking strong. So we've got downside targets and the relative. Here we see the live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance. Bharti Infratel down 1.5%, and India Oil Corporation 1.4% down. But good upside targets, probably looking like a recovery. If we take a look at the European market now, FTSE 100 this morning, best performer is Coca-Cola Group. They're up 1%. Ocado up nearly another 1%. They're just storming ahead. They've had an incredible few weeks run. They've up 40% so far this year, outperforming the Dow. Actually, well, 40% in the last few weeks, outperforming the Dow so far this year by 60%. So really running there. On the downside, we've got BATS. They've been pretty badly hit today, down 1.5%, and still bearish on the long-term chart. The relative looks like it's recovering a little bit, and if we look at some of the others, we've got Rick and Benckiser. They were pretty hit on this Nvidia. Previous owners of Nvidia, they were pretty badly hit this week on Nvidia. They're down a further 0.4%. Again, we're seeing the live pricing coming in here from Yahoo Finance. Taking a look at the FTSE 250, the best performers Games Workshop up 9.5% this morning. That's really pushing higher. Good turnaround for them. One Savings Bank up 5%. Looking at the downside, we've got plus 500 down minus 28%, so really big moves there. Nvidia, which we mentioned, down massively this week on this news that in the US they may face a $3 billion fine, which could be game over for them. So we're seeing the effects there still hitting through this morning. Taking a look at Europe, we just ranked by performance. Airbus up 1%, so up 1%. They're looking pretty strong. Danone in France up 0.6%, so also looking pretty strong. And we're seeing here again the live pricing coming in. And last of all, if we look at the downside, we've got CRH Group in Ireland. They're down 1%, but they're still looking like a reasonably good recovery with some long-term resistance to break through. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. Have a great weekend. See you then.